Hello there, Juranish of Whiskey Lore. Time for another whiskey tasting. And today, just got back from voting. I'm going to take that off because I'm going to forget about it. It's kind of in the wash machine, gumming up the works. But there, proof. I went and voted, or I hijacked somebody's stickers. Talking about voting and I was thinking, what tie-in could I do to voting in today's tasting? And I thought, awards. Awards. Whenever you go looking at your Instagram feed or you hear a distiller talking about their whiskey, you hear all sorts of awards. It's like double gold for best whiskey that someone drank while they were thinking of fish. I mean, it's like there are so many of them, and it actually gets kind of ridiculous after a while. It gets to a point where it seems that every single whiskey on the market has an award of some sort. And so my question is, how much of that do you pay attention to? Do you care that a whiskey won an award? And who are those awards for? Are they for the marketing department so they have something to plaster up on their site? Are they for the award companies themselves because they are basically normally charging for entry into these competitions? There are some, like I've seen USA Today's a news source, and they do, small whiskey distillery of the year. In fact, Burnt Church Distillery I recently gone to won that. Iron Root, another distillery I've been to, won that. And they're both great distilleries. I haven't taken the formal tour at each one, but I really like what both distilleries are doing. Does that make them the small craft whiskey distillery of the year? Especially when people have to nominate and maybe people haven't gone to all. Maybe they had a better campaign, get out the vote kind of thing going on, and punch in those nominations for us, that sort of stuff. I just say I have a skeptical eye towards awards myself, and my feeling is that the awards are there for the marketers. They are there for the profit of the award companies, and they're also there in a way to maybe help the novice whiskey fan really figure out what they might want to try. But in a way, it also kind of takes advantage of the lack of knowledge of the whiskey fan that is new to all of this in deeming, like with an age statement, well, got an older age statement, it must be good, or it's a high price, it must be good, or at 120 awards, it must be good, which completely misses the idea that whiskey is subjective and that you're going to like something that I'm not going to like, and vice versa. And so why should it be left up to a bunch of people who are so-called experts in tasting to determine whether a whiskey is good or a whiskey is not good? It's part of the reason I do bracketology in the wintertime into March, where I give you guys a chance to nominate and vote, because I want to know what you like, and I would rather have a group of people say it who are just average, everyday whiskey drinkers, rather than having somebody who is supposed to have a great palate telling us this is a great whiskey or this isn't a great whiskey. What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead and leave your comments below. Meanwhile, I'm going to do a tasting of a whiskey that is awarded. A lot of awards. I constantly see awards for this. Widow Jane, aged 10 years. Had a chance to talk to Lisa Wicker, who was part of the reason that this bottle is sitting here, and also part of the reason why what's in that bottle tastes the way it does, because Lisa has this background where she started in wine. She started working for Huber's, which is a great distillery in southern Indiana, and then she went to work with Steve Bean down at Limestone Branch, which is the home of Yellowstone. And then she's gone on some various stuff, doing a lot of consulting as well. And then she ended up with Widow Jane and helped them design this whiskey. Now she's actually just left again, and we're not sure where she's gone. She's going somewhere in Kentucky. I haven't heard an update on it yet, but it was interesting because Widow Jane, how often does this happen beyond Elon Musk? That that a distillery sends out a message and says, our employee is leaving. Especially when your employees had such an impact on your particular whiskey. I just found that absolutely fascinating. But this is a whiskey that, like I say, constantly wins awards. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to do a nosing and tasting on this whiskey. I have not tasted it since we've done the interview, and that was months and months back. Very interesting interview. She's an amazing woman and definitely worth checking out. That's on Whiskey Lore, the interviews. So this is a 10-year-old whiskey. Now, yesterday I tasted the Wild Turkey 12-year-old, and I'm getting some of those same kind of notes in here, in that I pick up a little bit of rye on the nose. I get vanilla and caramel, of course, coming through, and I'm getting those, what I call it, tobacco-y notes maybe? A little of that warehouse smell coming in. So the oak, to me, is kind of an herbally oak, if there is such a thing. And I think the herbaliness is coming from the rye, but it's kind of a nice mashup of the rye and the oak there. There is a little bit of a matchstick smoke on this as well, and that really caught me off guard. I didn't catch that the first time, but this time it is standing out a little bit more. Not a peated bourbon. And this is a mixture of bourbons. She specially goes out and picks casks for this, and so she has Illinois. No, I got Illinois on the brain for some reason today. Indiana, so probably MGP, then Kentucky and Tennessee. So even though the distillery or the business is in Brooklyn, the actual spirits in this bottle are coming from the limestone shelf there in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana. Got it right this time. Do a little tasting on this. Now, what's interesting is she says that they actually use mineral water, think Perrier, to kind of knock the, instead of using regular spring water for doing their proofing down. This is 91 proof, 45.5% ABV. Time to jump in for a taste. The caramel is out front. Then the oak comes in. Then it dries on the palate, and you get the herbally rye comes in at the end and really kind of coats the whole tongue. You get some spiciness and you get a lingering of that caramel, but it's very light. No smoke. The smoke is gone. The smoke was only on the nose, and I'm wondering if maybe that's coming from the char of the barrels. Really interesting whiskey. 10 years for a bourbon, probably at the top end of where I like bourbons to be normally. And I think that the oak is making its presence known in this whiskey, but it's not overbearing. It's kind of what I was talking about yesterday with the Wild Turkey 12-year-old, in that, you know, that extra 2 years in that barrel really gets that oak much more out front. And I think for me, it's finding that balance where it doesn't take over the whole drink, which it didn't on the Wild Turkey, but it definitely was a punchy oak flavor that came out. This has less of that, but it's still, for the person who goes, oh, whiskey's good when it's older, and it's because they like that oak flavor, the tobacco notes or the leathery notes, then I think this whiskey probably hits a little bit more home for you. Maybe it doesn't go far enough. I don't know. But for me, I wouldn't want to go much further than this. I think it's really kind of at the point it needs to be at. Is it award winning? Does it deserve to be whiskey of the year after year? That is up to you, not up to me. As I say, whiskey is subjective, and what I like, I try to give you the tasting notes and try to only suggest at the very end where I put it, what my category is for it. I think it's a good whiskey. I definitely think it's a solid drinker, and one that is going to be picked out of my cabinet a lot more when I'm in the mood for a little bit of that oak flavor. Hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video or you learned something out of this. And go back and check out that interview with Lisa Wicker. Because when I interview people about their legacy, then it's timeless. You should be able to listen to it at any point because we are recalling their history and not necessarily focusing so much on a particular modern product, although we do talk about it, but it'll give you a little bit more background into that. Until next time, cheers and Slan Java. It's funny how sometimes I get a little cola note on these whiskeys after I'm done doing the recording. I picked up on a little of that. Interesting.